We should just walk closer to the screen than we really have to sink to actually get ourselves in the picture. One of the uses of using, yeah, that's right. Okay, so so just getting into the legs, this is the most important thing, is to start. So as your legs slowly gain courage, all this area can start to just relax open. So the structure is relaxed, but the danchen has got tone in it. So the structure is like a container, and then the danchen is like a tight bladder that bounces up and down inside that container. So feel the ground beneath your feet. So what we're trying to do is get inside the ground. We want to go through the surface of the ground and into the earth. And for that, we need to turn ourselves into like an instrument, an implement, a tool that is capable of digging. Now, to turn yourself into a tool, you have to basically quieten the mind. So, because it just requires focus and quiet. Yeah. So all of this quietens down. I just come down to here and I operate from here. Just imagine your sacrum is like the head of a little hammer, and you're just tapping something down, like you're tapping a stake into the ground. It doesn't have to be hard. Imagine one of those jeweler's hammers, and they just give a light tap just to help a screw or a nut become loose. So we're like tapping our energy into the ground, and we're tapping the ground's energy into us. So as it becomes more and more open, then you tend to feel riding horse more and more, like the legs are really widening. All the time relaxing around the sacrum and around the tailbone. The tailbone is very important. In Tai Chi, what we tend to do, we look for vestiges, we look for those parts of our body that have sort of lost significance with civilization and with time. So like the little fingers, the little toes, and the tailbone in particular. And we just try and wake them up because they contain secrets that we've sort of lost. So think of your tailbone having almost like a life of its own. So when you do movements here, your tail can wiggle around. And it's always looking for the dark. It's always trying to find its way into things, into darkness. It's like a maggot. So slowly we're moving more and more onto the outside edges of the feet. So really push your big toes down to make sure that you keep a good connection with it. So as your instep starts coming off the ground, you just push down with the toes to keep some sort of outside edge connection. Okay. So now let's just work the feet a little bit. So just trying to get the two small toes, so the little toe and the one next to it, the ones that we normally don't have much feeling for, to try and get those activated. So what we're going to do, we're just going to let the knees collapse in, and then we're just going to push the knees apart and then roll them in and really come onto the inside edge of the feet and then rolling them apart. So this is the action that we will be practicing, but of course we want it to come from a different place from where it's coming from at the moment, because at the moment it's coming from the knees. So what we want is for it to come from those two little toes. Yeah? So as I let my knees collapse in, you try to use your hands as well. So it's easier to feel it in the hands, and then you just got to transfer it into the feet. So as my knees come in, I'm extending the toes, especially the two little toes. I'm wanting them to really push outwards and straighten, like I'm trying to get these two fingers the same length as the other two, and the same in my foot, those two toes, the same length. And then what I do, I just put the foot down on the ground, and I grasp with those toes, with those two little toes, I clutch the ground, and it's that that pulls me down and rounds out my knees. So it's basically a foot exercise. So what you're trying to do with the foot is twist it into the ground and turn them upwards, like they would be if you were sitting in lotus. And then you just roll it out again. And again, this is from the little toes. Little toes are extending, and then the little toes are reaching down and grabbing the ground and pulling in. And then again, here the toes are extending. So it's all the toes, but particularly we're concentrating on the two little ones, because they're the ones that are a little bit dead. And then, and so it's easy to see it in the hands. So it's like you're grabbing a handful. Imagine you've got your hands on the sand at the beach, and you're grabbing a handful of sand and just bringing it up. So that's what your feet are trying to do, but of course your feet can't come off the ground. So it ends up pulling, so what it does, because you can't pull the feet up, the effort to pull the feet up actually pulls you down. So just feel it in the toes. So I'm grabbing the ground. Yeah, it's especially important, these sorts of exercises for the feet, because we've forgotten what it means to go barefoot most of the time. So even when we do go barefoot, the feet are pretty dead because we've worn shoes for so long. So we're trying to just split the foot up into its component parts, into all its toes. Imagine how many bones there are in the foot, you know? And just like feeling, how does it make me feel when I extend the toes like this, especially the little toes. Imagine, you know, they're vestigial. So connected to every part of the body, there is like an energy that affects your whole body. So when I extend the little toes and imagine they're more important than I assume they are, then it opens something up. It's like you become like a hedgehog. It's like you grow spines all over. Yeah. So here, yeah, or like a porcupine, and clutching the ground. And all the time, whenever we use the legs, you just imagine that there's someone behind you pressing down on you. So in the background, there's always this drive down through the body. So when you open the feet up, don't let yourself come up too much. Yeah? Because we're wanting this to actually push us into the ground rather than bring the body up. Yeah? So we're trying to pierce the surface of the ground. And to do that, we need to open the foot. We need to make the foot a lot more active. So, and then in. So it looks great. Yeah. So you can. It's a bit like a magical exercise that turns you into some strange creature. It turns you into some sort of animal. So there's almost a feeling of slipping into a trance when you get it. And you don't need to do it vigorously. You just need to keep it going, keep the continuity. So the most important thing is the continuity, is what in Tai Chi they call mind continuous. So this is why we want a quiet mind, because a quiet mind can extend through time. It's not flitting all the time, it's not stopping and starting. So we want to just extend and hear. And so what we're looking at all the time is the return. How do I make that return happen so that it doesn't stop and start? It's all one continuous breath. So out, in, and it's all coming from the toes. Of course, the toes waking up some aspect of your energy that starts to just breathe and pump. Yeah, so to start with, we use the feet in this exercise to actually wake up an aspect of our energy. And then the feet doesn't really matter. Once that energy is activated and is active, then I can almost forget the feet. So, wow. But the important thing to catch really is that feeling of the little fingers, little toes, and how it, when you activate them, it gives you a detail, like this sort of decorative energy to your body that we've generally lost. So here something in you just comes out, and then here you gather it all back in again. And then again something in you just comes out and back in. It's great. Out in, out, in, out. Right. And now let's just bounce it a few more times. So what I always suggest is, you know, when you're at home, always be barefoot. And if you're sitting down, like watching TV or something, then you can always be doing toe exercise. It's just extending the toes and gripping. Yeah. Because they need a lot of work to waken them up. It's almost like you want, the feet should have a mind of their own. And it's been dominated so much by the central mind. We just like to wake that up. Okay, and now just feeling the down chin, and now just tighten, just pull it in, just a simple exercise here. Just pull the belly in. So this is more for the spine. Yeah, so using the belly and the back to flex the spine. So here this would be called flexion, where you're bending the spine. And then this would be called extension. So pulling in. And again, you can get the toes working. So basically, whatever your hands are doing, you'd like the feet to be doing as well. So everything's coming in, everything's curling up into circles, and then everything is straightening out into relatively straight lines. And pulling in, and out, in, and in, out. And then just bouncing again. Again, just feel the sacrum like a little hammer, tap, tap, tap. This sacrum is a difficult part of the body to have much feeling for, much visualization for, which is why it tends to always be behind where it should be. Because we tend to be looking down into this space, and you just want to look inside and just really be able to visualize your own sacrum and feel it, and just use it as a tool. It's like a little hammer, and then it will just naturally want to be forwards of where it normally is in the right place. So you're aiming for this center, the dantian, the heart center, and the center in your head to be all in a line. So this is supporting this, and then together these support this. Okay, now let's try. Have you got a chair or a stool? Yeah. So I've got this, which is ideal because it's stable and it's flat. So just standing, just with one foot on the chair. So basically, we're just going to do what we've been doing, but do it with one foot on the ground. Now, it's a lot easier and a lot less stressful if you've got the other foot resting on something. So we don't want to be too stressed. Okay, now just start bouncing, yeah? And just feel how much more difficult it is when you're actually having to support all your weight on one leg. And really get it to bow out to the side, yeah? So it swells out away from you. Maybe let's try it like this. So the same hand as the leg is down by the side, and the other hand is just in front of you. So you just, and again, just feel the sacrum. So it's not enough just to blindly bounce with your body. You want to feel the sacrum as being like the head of the hammer that's just banging down into your leg. And then you'll tend to get this forwards and in the right position. So it doesn't take long for the leg to actually start protesting. So you can stand in riding horse for hours, but then when you stand on one leg, it's a different matter. And now let's just pull in. So the same exercise we were doing, just pulling the belly in. So pulling the belly in. And just feel, so everything in the body that we consider as one, so like the down chair, you've only got one of those, you've only got one brain, you've only got one spine, is actually in two halves. So as you pull in, just feel this side preferentially tightening more than the other side. So the side of your down chin that is with the weight will tend to do more work. That's it. So pulling in and relaxing out. Pulling in, relaxing out. Right. And now just the other side. So again, just start off just by bouncing. But again, we're bouncing by visualizing the sacrum to be the head of a hammer. So you're tapping something down the leg. So again, just trying to get the leg to bow out to the side. So feeling like you're slipping into the outside edge of the foot. So it's almost like you're going to fall in that direction if you're not careful. And all the time just telling yourself, I shouldn't just blindly bounce, I have to tap this down. So, precision, concision, and incision. So we just want to become finer instruments. Now just pulling the belly in as before. And so curling the fingers and the toes. and extending the fingers of the toes. Pull, reaching out, drawing in, reaching out, drawing in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, Very good. Okay. So now let's just put the chair back. Okay, so now just trying to now just investigate this thing that they call in Tai Chi called tearing silk. So just the idea that you're actually moving in both directions at the same time. So just imagine you have a sheet of tough cloth, like canvas or something, and you tear it in two. Yeah? So you're pulling one hand one way and one hand the other in order to create this tear between the two. So that's the feeling of getting your energy to come out. Because when your energy comes up, it comes up in the opposite direction of what you're sending down. So we want to get away from this very simplistic idea that you go down in order to come up. So you're not bringing energy up by actually scooping, and not like someone digging where they're just scooping and throwing something up in the air. It's more like they're both happening at the same time. So as I sink down into this leg, this energy is actually coming up out of the leg as I sink. Yeah? Now, in order to get that tearing action, which is basically something going in one direction, something going in the opposite direction, we have to get into turning. Because if you think of a wheel, if you have like a horizontal wheel and it starts spinning, then one side of the wheel is traveling in one direction and the other side of the wheel is traveling in the other. So it's naturally separating and naturally tearing. And this is exactly what we do. So we just, as we do something, if you introduce a circular element, then you will get this tearing action, this feeling that you're actually going in both directions at the same time. So if I don't do that, then I have to go into the leg and then come out of it to actually get energy from the ground. Yeah? So this is fine, it's just a bit simplistic. Now what we want to do now is just go down into the leg, but then just let myself turn as I'm going down to actually bring energy up. So I'm sinking down into the leg, and as I sink down, if anything, I'm turning this way. But then I just introduce the opposite turn, and I draw something up, but I'm still sinking. This is the important thing, still. So this side of my body is going down, and this side of my body is going up. Yeah? So this is what we want to try and make sure that we're getting right. So, and it's only when the energy that's coming up leaves your body that you can actually start going with it and stop the other energy going down. Yeah? So here I'm turning. So one side of my body is still sinking down the leg, the other, and then once this hand gets up to here, I can then consider losing this leg. So just sinking down and And now just turn and just feel the turn. So here we're using a turn, not to get out of the way of incoming energy, but to actually transform a down into an up that's actually happening at the same time, rather than sequential. So here, and the skill is just to keep yourself down. So you have to just imagine yourself really heavy. So it's almost like you're half asleep. So here it's very sluggish, like a sloth. The way they move, everything's slow motion. So here, so it's like, in the classics, this says move like a cat. So like when you watch a cat moving, it's completely mindful. Its consciousness is totally with its movement. It's not careless. It's not like a dog that bounds around with this sort of bouncy, boisterous energy. So a dog is like pure spirit, just playful and constantly active, whereas a cat is much more mindful. So when a cat moves, it's like every centimetre of that movement drips with awareness and magic. This is what we would like. So there isn't a moment when you're just carelessly moving. The mind doesn't wander. The mind is with the movement. And the beginning of that is just getting the mind into the down chair. Just feel that part where the wheel gets introduced, and also where the circle comes in. So here, that feeling of tearing, it's almost like you're tearing your own soul. It's like there's something quite difficult about it. It's like, ooh, because we're having to just make a crack. We're having to make a rent, a hole, so that the energy can come rushing up. And it's almost violent. Yeah? And then start to feel the foot. Yeah? So in order to get more energy, more activity, just naturally come off the heel and use the front of the foot, because the front of the foot is much more to do with the energy. And the back of the foot, the heel, is much more to do with the stability. Yeah? So here I'm sinking into the heel. Now I want to do all I can to help that energy come up, so I just come onto the front of the foot and off the heel in order to help that transition from energy just going down to something beginning to come up. So one. Yeah, so this heel is coming off the ground. So, yeah, like, if you were sort of working with a group of kids, yeah, and you wanted them to start generating a little bit of quiet excitement, then they would just naturally start walking on tiptoes. So they would naturally come off their heels, but they would also naturally crouch. Yeah? So it's like we're getting that yielding bend into every part of the body, including the foot, but especially the foot, really, because the foot is where it all starts. The foot is our connection with the ground. So here I'm just, yeah, so that. Push. And when you do come off the heel, feel which part of the foot are you actually on. And it's those two little toes and the pad of the foot close to them that you tend to be on. And so that part of the foot that we normally ignore, assuming that it's only the heel and the big toe that's important, becomes the most important part. Yeah, so that this pad here, that's the only part of my foot that's on the ground. So the foot has to be really quite strong. Great. And now let's just bring it back to here. And again, just feeling this as like a little hammer. And it's like you're just tapping tacks into a piece of wood. So very gently. So it's all in the action of the wrist. So you're not using the hammer like this. It's very light, it's all in the wrist, a bit like a fencer. You know, when there's fighting, it's all in the wrist. And the elbows just relaxed and down. The same thing here, we're just tapping. And so it's good to just start thinking in terms of getting into the earth, somehow tapping very ancient natural energies. So like the Celts called the world we live in Middle Earth because it was in between the lower earth and the upper earth, which was the heavens. And for them, like the Druids, the men of knowledge, it's interesting that to become a qualified Druid took 20 years of training. It was the longest education ever really known in the Western world. Yeah. And they weren't so much priests as just men of knowledge. They just knew about nature and about energy. Yeah. And what they were interested in was just tapping these energies that we don't normally tap into. And these are all things that, you know, they would have happened naturally. You know, imagine you were going off on a hunt. Now, how much help you actually need. So you need help from the gods, from your friends, from nature. So you're looking for signs or looking for omens all the time that will help you make the informed decisions. So we've lost all that. You know. So for us now, information is something that we can glean from the internet. You know. It's nothing to do with where we are and our energetic connection with the space that we're in. So most people now, when you walk, the other day I was walking along Daphne Street in Tel Aviv, and I thought, you know, I've seen it all now. There's a woman, a lovely looking lady, sitting down breastfeeding her child whilst she was watching a YouTube video on her phone. Yeah. And so just you know, we just tend not to be with the thing that we're with. Yeah? So here we're just trying, we're just tapping, it's like just knocking on the door really. And eventually that door will open and let you in, but you just have to be persistent and patient. And also, you know, what, it's like, you know, the stories of Westerners going to seek instruction from Oriental masters and having to come back every day for a year and knock on the door and the master refuses them. But eventually the master, overwhelmed by their sincerity, agrees to teach them. And so that's the magical ingredient, it's the sincerity behind what you do. And without that, nothing will open up. It'll just be exercise, it'll just be fitness training. Yeah. It's nothing to do with energy. Okay, now let's just crouch or squat. And again, just pulling in from here. Yeah, so this is very important as well, partly because it's opening up the hips, and obviously, yeah, but also partly, mainly, because it actually gets your dantian very close to the earth. And the pull of the earth, gravity is strongest the lower down you go. And it may not be much of a difference, but it's actually quite significant energetically. So here, just move from leg to leg, just opening up and just feel the tug of the earth on your dantian. Yeah. So it's like in the back of your mind, you're just sort of conscious that there's communication going on between your dantian and the earth, but you daren't look at it too closely or be too much of an eavesdropper because you'll spoil it. So you just want to just let it happen. And time will tell. And that's a beautiful phrase. Now just imagine that you have a friend behind you and they just bend down and just gently put their hands on your shoulders, on your back. Yeah? And just imagine, just feel just what sort of support that touch would give you. It would just bring you into your body in a way that you just can't do yourself. You know, when we think we're in our body, we're not really, we're in a mental image of our body. Yeah? It's quite different. Now, when someone touches you, then suddenly you just come into that touch and into the things that are touching you. So you come into yourself and you also come into them. So just imagine they're behind you. They've gently got their hands on your back. Now what you want is for your movement from foot to foot to also move them from their foot to foot. Yeah? So your movement has to have a sort of weight and a power from the ground, not just to move your own body, but to move them as well. And you can practice this with another person. It's a beautiful thing. Because they really feel it when you're actually moving their body. Then they get as much. It's the great thing about working with another person is that they get as much out of it as you do. So you don't have to worry about them helping you. You're both helping each other. So here you're just driving from one foot and you're pushing their body across into their other foot. Okay? So when we're having to move something else, we tend to be much more mindful than when we're moving ourselves. Because of course we move ourselves all the time, so we don't really need to concentrate on it. So you want that connection with the other person even though it's imaginary, to actually bring you further and deeper into the action. And then you get deeper into the source of that action, which is your connection with the ground. And because you're crouched down, it's all very intimate with the earth. So it feels very different than when you're up. As soon as we straighten the legs, our heads are in the clouds. So here your head is much closer to the ground. So you think about it, your head is lower now than your dantian would be if you were standing up. Yeah. So it's like you're in a capsule from the ground. Imagine you crawled underneath a skin of rubber that is on the ground, and then you come up into this posture. So there's this rubber sheet that's actually tugging down on you all the time, trying to pull you down into the ground. That's the feeling that we would like when we're doing the Tai Chi. I remember once we were all sitting around with John one Sunday, probably evening after the class, and he used to have all these weights machines in the back room for just exercise. And we were talking about what would be the perfect machine to give us the right strength for Tai Chi. And he thought about it, and he just decided that the best thing would be like a wetsuit, like a rubber wetsuit that covered your whole body, but it actually inhibited everything that you tried to do. So even breathing was difficult with it on. Every movement was just a little bit restrained, so that you had to bring your mind and your concentration to every action that took place. Yeah. So that's the feeling that we like when we're doing Tai Chi, is that everything is a little bit more difficult than normal. So we're having to really concentrate and find the right way of doing it. So if I want to push myself in this direction, I have to drive from the ground. And so it's like a difficult mind to cultivate, because it is so completely different than the normal mind that we are taught, that we are privileged to, which is basically, we're told that we are not only, we are entitled to happiness. Yeah. And this is very different from that. This is more like, it's like a grim sort of connectedness that just runs through everything. It's nothing to do with that light, letting go, joy of the moment sort of feeling. I mean, that is great, but it has to be underpinned by dantian. And feeling of the dantian is very different from the feeling of the heart. Yeah. So if you want a heart that is light and compassionate and joyful and open, then you need the dantian that is the opposite of all of those. Okay, now let's just rock forwards onto the hands and just fill the arms with your weight. Yeah, and just rock a little bit. So just feel the arms becoming full with strength. And try and make sure the shoulders and the back between the shoulders doesn't collapse. You've got to really work on the arch to stop it from collapsing. Just let your head hang. Feel gravity acting upon the head as well as the belly. So you can be very conscious of your three centers there, the dantian between your legs, the heart between your hands, and the head hanging down slightly forwards. So they're all being operated upon by the ground, but quite differently. Just move from hand to hand a bit. So we're just trying to just tire the arms out just a little bit. And if you can come off your feet then all well and good. Yeah, you can just lift the feet off the ground and just balance on the hands. And then just rocking back. And again, now you should feel deeper into the hips now. So the down chin is like the center that is quite tight. Yeah, so if the heart is the center of compassion, then the down chin is the center of your ruthlessness. So ruth is just an old English word that means pity. So ruthless means no pity. And Castaneda said all pity starts with self-pity. Yeah. So this is like the difference between compassion and pity. Compassion is pure feeling for another, with no concerning thought of yourself. And pity is just a reflection of what you feel for yourself on the world. So this is just, the danjan is just the center that you put yourself if you have to do something that was difficult, something that required no pity. Okay, now up again. And just again, so just see if you can get up. That's a sign of getting old, and just again, just bouncing. Okay, now let's try a little bit of turning, but turning in order to yield. So let's just try yielding. So let's just do a little bit of imaginary pushing hands. So you're just sending a hand forwards, and then you're just drawing it back. But you're doing it by turning. So I'm sending the hip forwards with the hand, and then I'm pulling the hip back. So all with the one hand. So I extend forwards and I draw back. Push and pull. Push, pull. And just feel the weight change. So as you extend, imagine it. So what we're doing, we're punching someone and then we're yielding. Now yielding just means joining with the person and helping them do what they're wanting to do. So helping them come in. They're trying to punch me. So what I don't want to do is block it or push it out of the way. I actually want to assist it. Yeah? So if you think of the two parts that are the two important places are where your blow strikes the person and where your yield starts. So as soon as you make contact with the person to start yielding, it all hinges on that point. If you get that bit right, then it doesn't matter what you do, you'll get flattened. Yeah. Now if you get that bit wrong, so here, so basically at those 2 points, I need my weight in the opposite foot to get the cross energy. So as I'm punching, my weight is in this foot. And then as I start yielding, and yielding is just a little reach forwards and then a turn back. I'm in this foot, but then I take it into this foot. So I distribute it into the ground through the same leg. And then I come out, so I'm beginning to get the hand mobilized from this leg, But then when it lands, I want that sharp jolt of energy from the opposite leg. And then I pull in. Yeah. So I'm moving from leg to leg. So pull. Okay, now what we want to do now is just try and feel it in the hip. So when you yield, just feel this point here. So you break here, and it's as though there's a hole there, and you're trying to suck the other person's energy down into that point and into the foot. And then imagine a point on your back here, opposite this point and a little bit higher. And so you're turning here to actually throw something forwards from that point. So you're yielding from here, and you're attacking from the back, from here. So you're yielding from the front, and you're attacking from the back. Yielding from the front, and attacking. Yielding. And again, just feel that skin of rubber just pulling down on your body. So you're being dragged down into the ground all the time. So everything that you do is resisted by this skin. So everything's quite difficult. So, and then from the back. So as we push, just feel the difference between the energy that actually starts the hand coming out, which is from this leg, and the energy that actually cracks into the person in order to do the damage, which is from this leg. So there's one energy moving the hand, which is from here, and then there's another energy actually delivering that killer energy, which is from here. Now you actually need both. So here I'm whipping out from here, like I'm throwing that fist out, and then as it lands, there'll just be a jolt as I just pump into this foot. So, and back, push, and pull. And now let's get the other one in as well. So it's exactly the same. Yeah. So out from here, and then in from here. So we have to try and visualize the yield and the attack coming from the hip rather than from the arm. So remember, we want to get the action as close to the danchin as possible. And so even though when you look at someone doing it, all the action is in the arm and the upper body, their mind is actually with the motor, which is here for the turning. Yeah. So here, throwing from here, and then yielding to here. It's like a little hole. And then you can just get both going together. So one, just yield, and just have your mind with the yield. So I yield, I pull in, I pull in. So it's what we're looking at is how yield and attack actually belong together. So if you're going to effectively yield, then that yield needs to start off with an attack. And if you're going to successfully attack, then that attack needs to start off with a yield. So basically you can't really have one without the other. So if someone was coming in to punch me, the most important thing is that I get to them as quickly as possible. It's like often, if someone's going to lose their temper, you can often sense that they are. And if you just get in and say, I'm sorry, then it doesn't become physical. So this is the idea here. So this is as much the attack that precedes the yield. So I'm sending my hand in order to then diffuse the situation. Yeah. And then, of course, to actually attack properly, you need to have dug into yourself and found some energy that you can bring out. And that is basically yielding, so you've gathered. So here I'm gathering in order to punch out. So these two phases belong together. And then there's no break between them, because they're all different sides of the same coin, if you like. And just try and keep it all in the dantian. As soon as you start becoming interested or overexcited by what's happening in the arms, then you tend to lose your root. You lose the connection with the ground, and then the only energy you're really working with is your own excitability. We're trying our best to dampen that. So this is what ruthlessness is really. It's just this ability to just remain cold and dispassionate in the heat of the moment, so that I can keep a connection with the ground, so that I always have that sort of deep reservoir to draw upon. And it would be especially important if we were dealing with energies other than human ones, which we tend not to anymore. And so all our interactions nowadays are with other people. And so we can quite easily get by with just excitable, busy, scurrying energy. We don't need any depth generally. But when you do meet someone with depth, they just generally just look a bit miserable and uncommunicative. Because they don't, people with depth tend not to suffer fools lightly. So, if you read the Desert Fathers, one of their main things was just silence, staying quiet, never saying anything. You only say something if you're addressed, and then you just keep it simple and keep it short. A bit like me. And turn, pull, turn, pull. So the difference between this exercise and the other ones that we were doing is that this is single weighted. So by what we mean by that is the two sides of the body are working complementarily, so as opposites, as one is pushing, one is yielding. And as soon as you start working like that, then you just wake up different energies inside the body. And it's energies of like just pure activity. For me, it just feels like a snake comes alive inside my body and starts coiling and uncoiling and slipping through. And that snake can easily just pass through into the ground and come back up. And it naturally sleeps, that snake, inside your sacrum. It's like sacrum is like a cage, and we need to sort of crack it open by these movements that are doing this. So you're crunching into your sacrum with these twisty, turny energies. And you start getting then waves and ripples passing through the body from the ground. So normally the only time we would feel energies like this is during sex. Yeah? And then it tends to get wasted. It becomes too intense, if you like. And then it gets dissipated. And then you just, then it takes 2 months before you've got the energy to repeat the process. So here we're just trying to sort of just wake that up and just get it twisting and turning and coiling and uncoiling. It's all going through. And then just put it to bed as soon as you finish. Yeah? And just think of it as energy that actually communicates with the earth, so with what's beneath your feet rather than what's on the ground, and with the heavens. So it's a beautiful phrase, that Middle Earth. Yeah? So the middle realm. So the Buddhists talk about the middle way, which is like the same thing really. It's just an abstraction. So the Celts were very into nature. You know those Celtic inscriptions and jewellery where they have the knots, those twining knots of cables? Yeah. So it's the energy that comes up in your body very much feels like that. So you can feel that those people just had a natural feeling for natural energy. They weren't in their minds at all. They were in their bodies, and their bodies were in nature. And they knew that. So slow motion. That's slow not because you've actually fallen asleep, but because it's just threatening to grind to a halt because these strong energies are so well balanced that hardly any movement is expressed. Yeah? So it's like, I'm really having to work hard to actually, and then it's really like tearing silk. Yeah? It's really pulling one against the other. Good. Okay, so now let's just bring it back just to here. Okay, so let's just finish just 2 minutes of just. So just sitting down. You don't have to sit down. Actually, I'm just sitting down because I can get closer to the screen. Okay. So we're trying to get the movements to have power that comes from balancing different the two opposing energies. So that slowness is like a slow train, yeah, that's inexorably just moving. Okay, now what we would like is for that to get a same sort of feeling with the breathing, yeah. So what we want to do now is just basically make it difficult to breathe. And so the way I do that is just by pinching the nostrils together so that the hole here is very, very small. Yeah. So I just pinch and then I just breathe and really concentrate on trying to breathe from the dantian. So I breathe in and then out. In. Out. In. Out. Okay, now let's try it. So we'll breathe in through that little hole, but then out through the mouth. But try and get the out breath to be slow. Yeah? It's going to be quicker than the in breath, obviously, but otherwise we'll just hyperventilate. Yeah? Okay, so just breathing in. So dip down and just breathe in and pull the belly in. Feel the belly tightening to get that in breath. So, and out. So you can make a small hole with the mouth. And in. Out. In. Out. In. Out. And one more. And out. Okay. So it's just trying to feel and develop the muscles that are involved with the breathing. So if you think the thing that we've been doing longer than anything else, other than having a beating heart, is breathing. And so in other words, it's the thing we've been getting wrong as long as possible. And so just trying to sort of get some consciousness of it. And it's like when you meet someone who is a good diver, like a free diver, so they're used to holding their breath. They've got real amazing control over their breath. So when every cell in their body is screaming and telling them to take a breath, they can still just keep it, otherwise they'll drown. Yeah? It's quite interesting. Their energy is actually really interesting. They've got long energy. They don't have the, what they say now is that the average attention span of a human being is 8 seconds. And the average attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. Yeah? So we're actually a little bit worse than a goldfish when it comes to attention span. And so what these divers have, if they can hold their breath for like 6-7 minutes in a dive, it's like a concentration. They can just keep some thread going in their mind. And when you meet them, they just have that size that just comes from being able to keep a concentrated mind going. They don't flit, yeah? And so for me, it's something that's just very important to just get into breathing of some sort, yeah? So next time, maybe we'll just concentrate a bit more on the breathing and that breath of fire and the other ones that we've done. Okay.